All right, so let's set the scene. It's 1949. The famous philosopher Theodor Adorno is on a ship, sailing back to Europe after 15 long years in exile. He's heading home, or what's left of it. He's going back to a Germany that's been absolutely shattered by a war that had started. But the real devastation he was about to face, it wasn't just in the bombed-out buildings. It was something deeper, something in the minds of the people.
And you know what? Adorno wasn't the only one feeling this way. Not at all. His colleague from the Frankfurt School, Max Horkheimer, had actually gone to Frankfurt a year earlier, and he was just horrified. He described seeing a society of ghosts. It was like an entire nation was just pretending the last 12 years of absolute terror just, poof, never happened. He came up with this phrase for it, a ghost sonata. And wow, that really captures the creepy, unsettling silence he found everywhere.
So that brings us to the big question, right? Why? Why on earth would Adorno, Horkheimer, and these other brilliant thinkers from the Frankfurt School, why would they choose to go back to that? A country that wasn't just in physical ruins, but was also trapped in this deep, collective state of denial.
I mean, Adorno himself called his journey a return to the heart of European darkness. And you can see why. Germany was a wasteland of rubble, not just physically, but morally too. This was the country that had been so proud of its culture, its philosophy, right? And it had just produced what he called a politically criminal system. And in the middle of all this destruction in his hometown of Frankfurt, Adorno found this one haunting little reminder of his past. In his family's ruined home, he could still see the imprints on the floor where his mother's piano used to be. It was just this ghost of a civilized past in a landscape that had seen so much barbarism. But here's the thing. The biggest shock for Adorno, it wasn't the rubble, it was the people. It was the psychological state of the country. It was exactly that ghost sonata that Horkheimer had warned him about. This deep, unspoken agreement across the entire society to just forget.
So when these exiles returned, they were faced with something just staggering. It was totally absurd. Suddenly, you couldn't find a Nazi anywhere. All the former supporters, the officials, the collaborators, they had all just melted back into society, going about their lives like nothing ever happened. The perpetrators had literally vanished into thin air.
And this exchange, it is a perfect and frankly infuriating example of this. So you've got Herbert Marcuse, another one of these Frankfurt School guys, and he's writing to his old teacher, the famous philosopher Martin Heidegger, who, by the way, had been a Nazi Party member. Marcuse is basically begging him, just say something, acknowledge the horror. But Heidegger's response? Wow. He calls it a political error and says a public apology was impossible because, get this, he didn't like the loathsome way other ex-Nazis were switching sides. It is an absolute masterclass in dodging responsibility.
So, faced with this total wall of silence, the Frankfurt School knew exactly what they had to do. When they reopened their Institute for Social Research in 1950, they had one clear mission: to shatter Germany's conspiracy of silence. It was time to force a reckoning.
And they came up with a two-pronged attack to do it. First, they were going to run a huge sociological study to really get inside the German mindset. And second, they were going to launch a pretty blistering critique of the whole idea of German culture itself.
Now, this sociological study they did, it was called the group experiment, and it was massive. We're talking about discussions with nearly 2,000 people. And it was everybody, former soldiers, students, even an ex-SS officer. The whole point was to get past the surface, to dig underneath what people were saying and uncover the real collective psychology at play.
And what they found, well, it was deeply, deeply disturbing. They basically uncovered what they called a collective psychopathology of denial. Instead of confronting guilt, people twisted it into self-pity. They'd blame Hitler and his top guys, which let them off the hook. About half of the people in the study just flat out rejected any kind of personal guilt. And maybe most shocking of all, anti-Semitic attitudes were still incredibly common, but now they were sometimes disguised in the new language of democracy. Unbelievable.
Now, Adorno knew this was not going to make them popular. He had this incredible metaphor for it. He said they were speaking of the rope in the hangman's house. Think about that. By forcing Germans to look at what they'd done, the Frankfurt School was breaking this huge societal taboo. And for that, they were labeled as bitter, as resentful people who just couldn't let it go.
Okay, so that brings us to the second part of their strategy, the cultural critique. And this is where we get Adorno's most famous and probably most controversial statement ever. It was a line that just sent shockwaves through the cultural world. So what on earth did he mean by it?
Well, for Adorno, the problem wasn't culture in and of itself. It was what culture had become. It was an escape hatch, an alibi,
You see, people could just put on some beautiful music by Chopin or read some Goethe, and it allowed them to feel civilized and ignore the ugly, brutal political reality they had just been a part of. Culture had become a beautiful lie, a way to pretend you weren't living in the hangman's house.
But here's where the story gets bigger. The Frankfurt School's diagnosis wasn't just for Germany. Far from it. While they were in exile in America, they'd been working on a theory that they thought applied everywhere. They believed they'd identified a certain type of person, a personality type, that actually makes fascism possible in the first place.
And they gave it a name, the authoritarian personality. Now, this wasn't about being German or Italian or belonging to a specific political party. No, they saw it as a new anthropological type. It's a fundamental personality structure, a way of thinking that makes a person incredibly susceptible to propaganda and deeply hostile to democratic ideas.
So how do you even measure something like that? Well, they created a personality test they called the F scale. And yeah, the F stands for fascist. It was designed to measure 9 key personality traits. Things like being super rigid about conventional values, having this totally uncritical, submissive attitude toward authority figures, being obsessed with power and toughness, and this tendency to think the world is just a wild, dangerous place full of evil.
Let's look at a few actual statements from the test so you can see how it worked. People were asked to say how much they agreed or disagreed with statements like this one. Now, if you strongly agree with this, it might point toward that trait of authoritarian submission, basically a willingness to just blindly follow authority.
Okay, here's another one. This statement really gets at that desire to just hand over control to a powerful leader, right? It's about giving up your own responsibility and just putting all your faith in some strong man. And you can see pretty clearly how that kind of thinking is fertile ground for fascist ideas.
And check out this last one. This is a great example of what they called authoritarian aggression. It's this impulse to condemn and really harshly punish anyone who breaks the conventional rules, especially people you see as outsiders or deviants. It's that classic us versus them mentality, really.
So, what was the Frankfurt School's final diagnosis for all of this? Honestly, it was pretty grim. They argued that modern mass culture itself, with its cookie-cutter entertainment and manipulative advertising, was actually creating this personality type. It was leading to what Adorno called an infantilization of society. It was making people more like children, robbing them of their ability to think critically and act for themselves.
And this all leads to their most profound and I think most important conclusion. Adorno argued that after the horror of the Holocaust, humanity has a brand new, absolute moral duty, a new categorical imperative. And it's this. The single most important thing is to arrange our thoughts and our actions so that something like Auschwitz can never, ever happen again. Period.
Which brings us to a final and pretty unavoidable question. Look, this research is more than 70 years old. So is the authoritarian personality just the ghost of the past, a relic from a very specific dark time in Germany? Or is it a psychological type that's still very much with us, maybe even a permanent feature of our own modern world?